Honorable guests, representative of the Archbishop's Office, ladies and gentlemen, Kalispera Sas. I'm honored to be here to speak in this beautiful and historic Crete. We Palestinians share a common history with you. In Gaza, we have unearthed the statue of Apollo and have preserved Byzantine mosaics, including the third oldest monastery in the world, the Greek Orthodox monastery of St. Porphyrius, which has been bombarded by the Israeli military that resulted in the death of 20 Palestinians who sought refuge there. Our common history is deep-rooted as the olive tree. We share lots of traditions. The dak is our traditional folklore dance, so similar to the Cretan folklore dance. In our traditional dresses, we have very similar stitchings of embroidery. We share common values and respect for human life, justice, and freedom. My dear friends, we all know Palestinians have been resisting the Israeli occupation for the past 76 years, because we have been and are being subjected to the cruelest form of apartheid and military oppression. Land and property confiscations, execution of civilians, including children, and the mass arrests of Palestinians for resisting the Israeli occupation and injustice. Israel has targeted journalists and poets, doctors, nurses, you name it, even children, just because they protested with their words, breaking out the silence of injustice for people yearning for their independence and freedom. Today, in its second edition, the translations of the works of the three great Palestinian literary laureates, Mahmoud Darwish, Samih Al-Qasim, and Tawfiq Zayyad. We explore their misery and their suffering for being exiled from their homeland. Mahmoud Darwish came from the village of Al-Birwa, which was one of the villages that was razed to the ground and completely flattened, along with over 450 villages during the Nakba of 1948, when 15,000 Palestinians were killed and sorry for the correction on the translation, 850,000 Palestinians were forced into exile. In the 1960s, Darwish was imprisoned for reciting poetry and traveling between villages without a permit. Considered a resistance poet, he was placed under house arrest with his poem Identity Card when it was turned into a protest song, quoting, "Put it in record, I am an Arab. I have 8 children and the 9th is due after the summer. What's those to be angry about?" This poem is about a Palestinian man explaining his identity to an Israeli oppressor, describing his family, work, situations, and history, lamenting the loss of his homeland. While Darwish, in his poem, is frustrated about the state of his identity in what was his home, he asserts that there is no hate in his heart. When a society experiences oppression and trauma, literature helps its people by giving them a voice, reinforcing their identity. Indeed, Palestinian writers have been noted for articulating their pain and suffering, but also for their contribution of bringing hope and aesthetic enrichment throughout literature. Palestinian literature is part of a broader Arabic literature that is linked to the story of the Arab language that is spoken by 313 people in the Arab world, and its long-standing literary production. The first distinct strings of Palestinian poetry emerged while Palestine was under the British Mandate, 1918 to 1948. Poetry naturally reflected the art of resistance. Such poetry lamented the destruction wrought by the British on the Palestinian society. particularly during the 1936 to 1939 revolution. During that period, poets such as Ibrahim Tuqan, Abdurrahim Mahmoud, and Abu Salma al-Karbi mourned the loss of Palestinian lives and the creeping danger of Zionism in Palestine. What came to be called the Nakba of Palestine in 1948, when Israel colonized 78% of historic Palestine, had been prefigured in poetry much earlier, in the 1930s and 1940s. Poetry sang for the homeland, expressed defiance, and relayed the impending danger of exile and hardship that Palestinians came to experience after 1948. The rise of the Palestinian Liberation Organization in the 1960s represented another milestone in the journey of Palestinian poetry of resistance. Palestinian poets in occupied Palestine and from exile in refugee camps in neighboring countries converged on giving voice to the Palestinian experience of dispossession and to the rising tides of resistance against Israeli occupation. This period, marked with remarkable poetic and literary output by Palestinian poets and novelists, including the iconic Palestinian novelist Ghassan Kanafani, who was assassinated by Israel in 1972, and the great Palestinian poets Mahmoud Darwish, Samih al-Qasim, Farwa Tuqan, and Tawfiq Zayad. The theme of Sumud literally translates perseverance, which became a major literary theme as a form of resistance, played an important role in Zayad's poetry. He is particularly well known for his poem, Here We Will Stay. In Lida, in Ramla, in the Galilee, we shall remain. Like a wall upon your chest and in your throat, like a shard of glass, a cactus thorn, and in your eyes, a sandstorm. Those writers revolutionized Palestinian writing and made a distinct contribution to the literature of resistance against the Israeli colonization of our homeland. Among all these important figures, Darwish came to symbolize the Palestinian poetry at its most sublime and popularity in Palestine and the Arab world more broadly. Quoting from his works, "Our body parts are our names. Besiege your siege with madness. Your loved ones have gone, gone. You either have to be or you will not be." Mahmoud Darwish. The poets we celebrate tonight are not mere wordsmiths. They are architects of revolution, constructing bridges between the present and the future liberated from the shackles of inequality. Their verses are not passive observations. They are incantations that summon change, resilience, and the collective strength needed to dismantle oppressive structures. Dear friends, in blatant defiance of the International Court of Justice, binding order indicating provisional measures in the case of South Africa against Israel under the Genocide Convention, Israel persists with its genocidal assault in the Gaza Strip, killing at least 700 more Palestinians and injuring over 1,000 others in just a few days since the court's historic ruling on 26 January. The court ordered Israel, inter alia, prevent the commission of all acts under Article 2 of the Convention, in particular, killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction, in whole or in part, and imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group being the Palestinian. Yet Israel has ignored this order, permitting and commanding its ruthless occupying forces and settler militias continue to kill, maim, and wreak more havoc and destruction, deliberately endangering the survival of Palestinian civilians, and bent on inflicting maximum pain and loss. Israel's Prime Minister states, "No one will stop us, not The Hague, not the axis of evil, and not anyone else." And he considers the United Nations as an axis of evil. Thus, another month of non-stop horrors has brought the casualty toll to 26,751. Today's numbers are over 27,000 killed and over 65,000 persons injured by the Israeli occupation forces bombardments in Gaza. 11,500 children, including babies and toddlers, are among the dead. Nearly 2,000 more children since 19th of January. In the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, the casualty toll has risen to 370 Palestinians killed since the 7th of October. We're talking in 4 months, nearly 400 Palestinians killed in the West Bank. And in the West Bank, there is no hostilities towards Israelis, but there is no excuse for the Israelis. The Israelis just want to kill Palestinians and expel them from Palestine. More than 8,000 humans, men, women, and children, remain buried under rubble, denied in death the dignity they have, being denied in life, along with hundreds of bodies exhumed and defiled by Israel's destruction of cemeteries and graves in Gaza, as it continues bulldozing land to create a so-called buffer zone. They want to create a buffer zone on Palestinian land, Palestinian occupied land. The buffer zones don't happen on Israeli soil, only on Palestinian soil. In blatant attempt of acquisition of land by force. Again, Israel's Minister of National Security, alongside dozens of other Israeli officials who participated in a return to Gaza conference on 28th of January, just last week, called for the ethnic cleansing of Gaza and building Israeli settlements there. And when we heard on the news that we will rebuild Gaza the way we want for the Palestinians, that was not the case. They had the long plan of building settlements and bringing Israeli settlers into Gaza and forcing the Palestinians into Egypt, neighboring Egypt. It is the same dignity denied to the more than 2 million Palestinians in Gaza, who are desperately struggling to survive the bombs, forced displacement, starvation, thirst, epidemics, and traumas inflicted on them by Israel, as it carries on with its genocidal rampage. Undeterred by the global calls for ceasefire and shielded by vetoes in the Security Council, Israel remains confident it will never face consequences for such great breaches of international humanitarian law and human rights atrocities. In contempt of the International Court of Justice, Israeli government officials and military commanders continue with their barrage of incitement and dehumanization against Palestinians, inflict unflinching in their calls for killing and annihilation in Gaza, flouting the order by the court for Israel to prevent and punish the direct and public incitement to commit genocide in relation to members of the Palestinian group in the Gaza Strip. What's even worse, that Israel continues obstructing humanitarian assistance, including food, water, medicines, fuel, to the Palestinian population in Gaza, including more than 1.9 million Palestinians who have been forcibly displaced from their homes and are in dire need of emergency aid. Even Israeli citizens are joining the government's siege by blocking entry of aid, exacerbating conditions of hunger, which is at the level of mass starvation and imminent risk of famine, and dehydration, malnutrition, and spread of disease and infections, with children most vulnerable to wasting, leading to death. Greece has, we thank Greece for sending 2 airplanes of military aid, 2 airplanes of humanitarian aid, sorry for the words, but they also have difficulty in sending them to Gaza, because the Israelis have a very strict measure of how humanitarian aid enters Gaza. First, it has to enter through the border with Egypt, and then has to travel 50 kilometers inside Israel to another checkpoint, have the containers checked, and then return to Rafah, and then to the organizations UNRWA and UNICEF in Gaza. When we had, in the past, before October 7th, there were 500 containers entering Gaza. Now less than 100 are entering, and even not at all. The Israeli occupying powers deliberately, systematically obstructing the Palestinian sustenance and survival in direct breach of the court's order to Israel to take immediate and effective measures to enable the provision of urgently needed basic services and humanitarian assistance, to address the adverse conditions of life faced by Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. Moreover, hospitals and other civilian infrastructure continue to be systematically attacked and destroyed by Israel, and hastening unlivable conditions in Gaza. Only 8 hospitals and medical facilities out of 35 are partially functioning in Gaza. With oxygen supplies depleted, emergency medical treatment has stopped in many hospitals in Gaza. We welcome the US and the UK's consideration to recognize the state of Palestine to save the two-state solution. As we call for Greece to recognize the state of Palestine in accordance with the decision of the Greek Parliament that has taken unanimously in 2015, noting that recognition of the state of Palestine on the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital is the only solution to achieve stability and peace in our region. And it's a natural right guaranteed to our people by all international charters and United Nations resolutions. I would like to express my sincere gratitude and appreciation to the Greek people and the Greek government for its important contribution in sending humanitarian aid to our people in the Gaza Strip. And I would also like to thank the Greeks here in Crete and all over Greece for voicing their support and standing out to the injustice, standing out to the oppression, standing out to stop the war in Gaza, to protect Palestinian civilians, to send in humanitarian aid. We thank you all from the bottom of our heart. It is greatly appreciated that you stand on the right side of history. In closing, I invite you to take the verses and become participants in a movement fueled by the potency of language and the unyielding spirit of resistance. Let these verses, by our rallying cry, our shared anthem, as we embark on a journey to reshape our reality. Remember that resistance is not a solitary endeavor. It is a symphony, each voice harmonizing with the next to create a cacophony that cannot be ignored. Let our collective resistance be the echo that reverberates through the corridors of power, demanding justice, equality, and a future for Palestine and the Palestinians. Don't you stop me, I am dreaming. We lived centuries of injustice bent over, centuries of loneliness. Now don't you stop me. Now and here, forever and everywhere. I am dreaming freedom. Katerina Bogu. Is to stop the bloodshed in Palestine. Stop the rivers of blood that are lying on the streets. Stop the killing of our children and our women. This is the first step. And then to allow humanitarian aid and to end the occupation of Palestine. Without a Palestinian state, there can be no peace. History keeps repeating itself. We had the first Nakba, now we have the second Nakba. And the Nakbas will continue. Palestinians will remain deep-rooted in their land. We will fight occupation. We will never leave our land. Those who have left have never returned. My parents are one of them. They left Jaffa in 1948. They still hold the keys to their house. They've never returned. And as well, if Palestinians are forcibly displaced from the West Bank and Gaza, they will never return. So we've learned our lesson. Even those refugees who went to Lebanon and to Syria, they have been forced into exile again because of the wars that have happened there. Thank you very much for your support and solidarity.